Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strange Coordinates, a show where we use brands as compass points to lead to fascinating stories. I'm Topher Burns.
And I'm Aidan Sarakaya. Along with our partner Robert, Topher and I lead an ad agency called Territorial that helps brands find their place in the world. But we're not the only people who love brands. On Stranger Coordinates, we focus on a specific theme and bring a traveling companion along with us on the journey.
Today, we're taking a little inspiration from our Eli Lilly episode and diving deeper into the pharmaceutical industry, specifically looking at how AI is changing how new drugs are launched and being brought to market.
And we're not going to explore this idea alone. In fact, today we have two guests joining us. Our first guest has led commercial strategy and launch programs across Moderna, Shire, and Novo Nordisk, scaling commercial functions and franchises to billions in revenue. She built Moderna's commercial function from first hire through the company's growth to 18 billion. And our second guest has also led commercial technology and AI transformation programs across Moderna, Novo Nordisk, GSK, Bristol Myers Squibb, generating more than 2 billion in commercial value. She has also led commercial transformation behind one of the industry's largest GLP-1 brands. Please welcome Michelle Nguyen and Barbara Salami.
Woo!
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, Aidan. Hi, Topher.
Hello.
Hello.
So nice to have you all on the show. For those of you who are not aware of the history of the four people on this call, we actually all did some work together at Moderna, award-winning work.
Yes, very much.
So it is
True.
super awesome to get the gang back together.
We're so excited to be here and excited that we're together again, Barbara and I,
Yes.
to come and talk to you. So yeah,
Yes.
super excited about what's ahead.
We'd love to get into that a little bit because the two of you just launched a company, which is part of the reason why we wanted to have you both on the call today. So can you tell us a little bit more about Decyd and why now? Why does it matter?
So it all started, it's actually a conversation that many executives have had when it comes to launching drugs, but they have it behind closed doors. It's a quiet conversation. They don't say it out loud. And it's this idea that you can have a great drug, the science and innovation can be amazing, but the launch still flops. And why does it flop? It's because most commercial teams and commercial leaders treat every launch like it's the first launch that ever happened in all of time. They build a playbook from scratch, they lean in on their gut, and on the handful of launches and experiences that they've lived through themselves on the team. So it's really about personal experience, and that's how companies de-risk launching. They bring in people that have some experience. But the whole time that's happening, Barbara and I recognized that there are patterns sitting right there. There's, we look at the launches we worked on. We look at the conversations that we've had with others. We analyze other companies that have gone out there, and the same launches win for the same reasons. Same ones blow up for the same reasons, and no one ever bothered to write it down. There's no system, there's no method to record that, and that's why Decyd exists. So we built a library of how drugs launch by mining, FDA, looking at annual reports from organizations, things like that, and how it actually plays out, like what worked, what breaks, why. And then we score the situation of the brand against the pattern library and both sides of it, like how ready are you, how ready is the market? And so instead of guessing whether you're strong or whether you're exposed, what to fix, and you don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to find out, right? And AI is eating every industry, and pharma commercial strategy is still running on slide decks and gut feeling. And that's, we're so excited because most of the spend in AI today is on the R&D side. So, and Barbara will share in a moment, like the spend on commercial and the spend on R&D is the same and sometimes higher on the commercial side. So the fact that these platforms like Anthropic, OpenAI, and they're all leaning in on R&D, the payoff for R&D is like 15 years away for development. The payoff on commercial is 12 to 18 months, 24 months away. So the opportunity is larger at many times, or equal size to R&D, and the runway is shorter. And so we really want to see and encourage, and that's why we're out there, to really be part of the first teams that are talking about how to apply AI in commercial strategy in particular, because there's a lot of spend there and there's a lot of waste and inefficiency. So Decyd, we believe, is the next forum in commercialization in AI.
That's
and
so
one
cool.
of the things that Michelle and I, talked about when we started this process, we said to ourselves, how many times have we said, well, I could have told you so. I knew, right? I knew. Well, I'm not surprised. And so definitely really excited in terms of what Decyd can do. And the analogy that we sometimes like to use is it's genetic testing for your product, for your asset. So just as we do genetic testing as a human, right, to figure out what you're predisposed to, whether it, certain conditions in the future, or actually some amazing traits you might have, it's the same thing. We take that asset and we pretty much tell you what your signature looks like, and hopefully help you see around current corners before you actually get to that point in your journey.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. You're talking about things that in some ways, I love the genetic testing metaphor. You're also kind of talking about holistically best practices. And I think it's really fascinating that we aren't hearing as much right now about how AI can just help reinforce and supercharge the implementation of best practices, because that does seem like something that is first step, a really, really tangible way to accelerate businesses and move them forward. In a way, exactly as you guys both said, we're hearing a lot about kind of like how AI can solve cancer, can transform things like you were talking about R&D. But in terms of near-term implementation, we're not hearing as much about just kind of people focusing on that. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your points of view on AI in general. Tell us a little bit more first about your backgrounds. Being at Moderna, you've obviously seen how AI can be implemented in the world of life sciences and biopharma. Would love to hear more about kind of your experiences there that have shaped what you've come to now.
And I'll start. So maybe I'll just talk a little bit more about my background. So long before my days at Moderna, or even quite frankly in pharma, I actually was an engineer, and I was focused a lot in terms of building neural networks. So this idea of pattern recognition was something that was definitely ingrained in how I've thought about things, including being an engineer by training, and always really looked at how we used data to try to like tease out those signals. And then we kind of moved beyond, standard descriptive data to prescriptive, and eventually to machine learning. But it never really was, I would say, just good enough to get to the point where we could apply it at scale. And so talking about Moderna, I would, I mentioned this to lots of people who I've spoken to. Moderna really rewired me from the standpoint of not being performative about what AI could do, but really thinking about how you embed it in your roadmaps, how you embed it in how work is done, and how you really drive true adoption. And so I carried that forward, right? So we didn't even actually have much of a choice when we're at Moderna, because in order for us to get from where we were to over 1 billion doses in the short amount of time, we needed to think about newer and creative ways of using technology, and AI, without question, was one of the ways in which we were able to do it. When I think about the industry and my learnings from Moderna, which was really around, I wouldn't say fearless. I would say having the courage to try and fail and learn very quickly and then pivot, right? What I found and I kind of double as an executive coach around AI, so I coach a lot of senior executives around AI. What I'm finding with the industry in particular is there is a lot of talk about it, there's clearly a lot of investment, as Michelle mentioned, on the R&D side, and it's really a lot of infrastructure that when we talk about AI, it's really infrastructure, right? It's the chips, it's the processors, and what have you. But the reality is, when you think about generative AI, which truly is what has really changed the world in the last few years. The one thing that you can think with, that can create, that can do, I would say that our industry still has a lot of learning and understanding to do even before applying. We are in the era now where every executive is asking their teams to use AI more, or the boards are pressuring them to have their teams use AI. The question is, are they using AI in a performative way to appease the leadership, or do they really understand truly how to use generative AI and its derivatives to change the outcomes that they need to deliver? And I think there is still a huge gap right now.
And that even came to a head, I feel like maybe it was even just a couple days ago, in terms of some of the headlines of a few of the major organizations. I think both Microsoft and Amazon were in the news for having to roll back their leaderboards because they had people who were just, attempting to get on the leaderboard, but weren't necessarily employing AI in meaningful ways. So they were wasting power, energy, time. I think there was some significant, can't remember who it was attributed to, but significant token usage in an organization that was like $500 million or something
wild.
crazy like that, which is just, it went too far in one direction. So I think you're right. It's probably we're going to see that pendulum switch back a little bit from just use and adoption to how can we actually apply this at scale within our
and I think
organization.
the fundamentals still don't need to change, but it's AI, just like any other wave, it's a shiny thing. I think where our leaders still need to get back to within this industry is starting with, what exactly are we solving for? What is the problem we're solving for? What does the outcome look like? Whose behavior changes as a result? And then ultimately, what do we do? Because AI might be the right way to approach the problem, and it might not be. And I love the technology. I mean, it's changed my life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because it's available, it needs to be used. So I think there's a little bit of striking the balance as well.
Yeah. I think from my lens, which is very different than Barbara's, my background is purely commercial strategy and marketing. I usually work with technology and rely on people like Barbara to provide the best overview and strategy technology-wise about how to launch. And so for me, it really is looking at the application of it. I think that's the biggest issue in our industry today, is that the application of AI is in places where they can measure it, right? It's not solving the best problems or finding the best use for it. It really is, how do we rationalize an investment in this strategy, and then where can we apply it, where we can prove it. This is where the difficult part of commercial strategy AI application is versus field force enablement, for instance. So you can take a lot of AI forward organizations in our industry are using it and applying it to operational processes, which include optimization of call planning to doctors. How often are you going to this doctor? So it's very measurable for a reason, right? Because the leaders have been tasked with using AI, and they need to get the investment, and then they need to prove that it works. How do you do that with commercial strategy? You won't find out until after. It's a little bit more, it's less process, and it's more strategic, right? So it by nature of the design of it can't be measured in that way until you actually look at the revenue numbers. And so that's where some of the hesitation is, right? How do I advocate for money for investment in AI if I'm not working in an operational function?
Yeah, it's really, it's fascinating to hear you both approaching your field that feels so much more complicated and high risk than the things that we deal with, but in a very similar way to some of the ways that we're thinking about deploying and using AI. We built something that is comparatively much more rudimentary than what you guys are working with, called bot-friendly branding. But the focus kind of comes from a similar point of view, which is, what are the things that we know AI is actually good for? What are the processes that we see directly in front of us, not 4 years down the road, that we know these can work well for? How do we create operational and team dialogues that create different types of systems that allow us to adapt to bringing in new stakeholders, and these new stakeholders are going to be robots instead of humans. So we need to learn to communicate in different ways and interface with each other in different ways. So it is kind of using the presence of a new intelligence to catalyze short-term processes and look at those and judge those based on impact. So very similar in some ways to kind of how you're talking about, Barbara, leveraging AI, and Michelle, how you're talking about focusing on impact, but from a more strategic point of view. So I think we feel like-minded, but also very inspired by what you're building, because it is leaps and bounds from the things that we're working on. It brings me to another question. In general, Barbara, I love how you talked about some of the use of AI right now as being performative. And it leads me to a larger question around kind of the conversation overall around AI is so fast moving. Aidan talked through a variety of different ways in which we're already seeing some types of attitudes reach their logical conclusions, and those maybe not necessarily being as successful in terms of just like use it at all costs, those types of things. I'm curious if you are comfortable talking about your attitudes about AI overall in the world and in the workplace. Do you describe yourselves as optimists in terms of what AI can do and the impacts it'll have? How do you feel about just kind of moving into a space where you're at the forefront of what is so hotly contested of an industry?
So I would say I'm a balance of optimism and a beautiful dose of skepticism. And the reason why I say that is I fundamentally believe that this technology is the single most, has probably in my lifetime at least, and maybe the lifetime of lifetimes of many, most important in terms of creating a different level of value creation. I'm going to say financial wealth personally, the scale of impact you can have. I fundamentally believe that that's really what this technology will allow and would unlock. So I'm very optimistic about that. I'm also really optimistic about the fact that while some roles will be eliminated because they really would not fit, right? If you think about AI and what's happening, AI is changing the speed of work. It's changing the value of work, the economics of work. Personally, execution is shifting, identity is shifting. All these things are shifting around AI. And so some roles will absolutely naturally die, but there will be a whole lot more roles that will be created as a result of this beautiful technology. And I say it's beautiful because I believe it is. And I mean, you're just talking about this human agent interaction. There might become agent managers. There might be people who are focused on litigation around, agents and how you think about that, all kinds of things. But at the same time, there's the reality of how powerful this technology is. And this is where my skepticism comes in a bit. They're twofold. One is it's so powerful. And if we are not intentional in terms of how we use it, there will always be bad actors. We could actually do more harm than good. And so there's that component. Then there's what happens on a day-to-day basis with the work that we do, where we use AI as a co-partner for how we synthesize and how we pressure test our thinking. And it is so beautiful at telling you the wrong thing. Confidently. And so what I've realized with my optimism and my energy to usually lean in first is that fluency has taught me how to balance the excitement of what I can build with the right skepticism to question, right? And that to me is what's really important. So understanding how to be skeptical in a way that doesn't really stifle the value of what you're doing, but makes the product better or makes the outcome better. And so that's why I kind of give myself the techno optimist with, a beautiful dose, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah, I think for me, from looking at how I've approached work in an executive role in brand leadership, it's always been directing teams to answer questions that I don't have time to answer because I'm busy working through meetings and bringing the organization along and trying to influence on the strategy internally. So then I have agencies, I have consultancies working, and it would take weeks to get things done. And at the scale of the research of, 5 PhDs and a team of strategists. Mm-hmm. And the timeline of that, I think AI can do the work so quickly, it blows my mind. I actually had no idea the speed and the thoroughness that a system like this could return something organized to someone like me. And we built Decyd, and I have to say, every time we run a report and I say to Barbara, I'm like, I wish I had this when I was a brand leader. Yeah. I would pay good money for this. And that's how I know it's a good product. And that's why we took this leap. But I think for people who've worked in industry, the way they work is going to fundamentally change, and if they fight that, they're going to be dead in the water, right? They need to embrace it as a tool, and Barbara says this all the time. It is a tool to enable. It is not a replacement, and so your expertise is not gone because the model isn't always right. You can scale and manage the model and tune the model to be as accurate as you want it to be, but it'll never be perfect, just like a person isn't perfect. So expect some mistakes, but it's wild to me, the speed at which we do these things. It's no longer going to be 6 months. It's going to be 2 weeks. Right. And that's what we're trying to offer too. Like, that's why we think it, and it's going to happen quick.
I just wanted to add, so there is, it's really interesting because I would say, over the last, Michelle, we started building this probably 9 months ago. Mm-hmm. It's very easy for us to also be in a bubble. Maybe naturally we probably are self-starters. We adapt or adopt things faster. And quite frankly, we were at a company like Moderna that really forces you to build the muscle. Mm-hmm. I do want to take a quick step back to recognize that there is true vulnerability across the board for many people when we start talking about AI. And to Michelle's point, you can't afford to be flat-footed, right? It's just, there's no space for it. But I do want to recognize that there's so many things. You have the doomsday, news feeds that constantly, tell people, well, listen, you're not relevant anymore. You're done for. You're too old. You're out. You're too young. You can't get in. Which then I'm like, then who stays? Who's there? And then there are the realities. There are the other realities that are broader than the work environment and whether or not you have psychological safety around which people have more permission to fail in environments, right? Because that also holds you back from wanting to experiment and try. And then there are bigger pieces, like there are even more deeper social concerns. Like I've had people who have said to me, you know what, I'm really concerned about the environment. And every time I use this technology, I feel like I'm contributing to a problem that my grandchildren will have to deal with. And so I think, as we are in a bubble, like the four of us happen to be in a bubble, and I'm grateful to be in the bubble, but I think it's very important that we recognize where everyone is and how we help them move along the journey is part of what we're also trying to do with Decyd, which is show them that this is not as scary. It's not going to be perfect. Your expertise still matters. But wow, how about you free up your time from the things you did 80% of the time, the things you did that didn't matter. You don't have to worry about now, and you can truly be the best version of yourself in terms of creating value.
Always bringing it back. Barbara always will give you that grounding vision across.
I love that idea of who has the permission to fail, because that's really something I hadn't considered in the world of AI, which obviously we all know as having worked with it, is that you need to give yourself the space for something not to work, and then to go back and rework it, to figure out how all these pieces connect. It's just like anything else. And the air of AI has that air of infallibility. So in some ways it kind of exacerbates that perception that if somebody is not in a position, whether that is, culturally or within their work organization or within their economic standpoint, if they do not have the ability to be wrong or to fail, they are set up even more to be vulnerable. And I really appreciate you calling that out. It's a perspective I hadn't considered before.
I also appreciate that as well, Barbara. And I'm going to kind of pivot us a little bit, but I do think that this is important because we all, the four of us, all work in a very unique environment where we all used to work at large scale corporations, where we were part of, whether it's hierarchical structures, thousands of employees, in some cases, maybe just hundreds. It's a big thing to become an entrepreneur and make space and become a founder on your own. And we would love to hear a little bit more from both of you about that experience, and how it feels to be driving forward your own organization and to also be doing that in a partnership together.
Well, the partnership part of it, I think, is easy. Barbara and I go way back. So we've known each other a long time and we have a deep respect. We were actually just talking about it this morning, for each other's skills. She and I are very different. And I think that if we brought similar skill sets to the table, it wouldn't be as fruitful a partnership. But we are alike in many ways in terms of philosophy about the work, values, about how we want to show up in the world together as a company. So those have been amazing. But it's I think taking the leap, as you asked, Aidan, in pharma at the level that we were working, senior executive level, people often call it the golden handcuffs. And I'm sure that exists in tech and finance too. And in pharma, you get to a certain stage and you have lots of people working for you. And the salary is really good because you're a specialized employee. And it's very hard to leave it. It's it's a big safety net. So, for us, it was really scary. We have, on the personal level, responsibilities. I'll speak for myself. I've always worked in industry for 20 years. I've always had a W-2 bringing home. So this was a huge, huge leap for me. And Topher, you and I talked about it a little bit when we caught up before. And I think there's a few things that you said that really resonated with me, which is, if you work in an organization or you work for yourself, there's a cost either way. And you're trying to weigh, is this a cost you want to pay, right? Is it your feel for autonomy to run strategy, to choose the clients you want to work with, or are you okay with handling bureaucracy and working through the channels to influence people? Some people may say, no, I'm not willing to do that. I want to branch out on my own. Yeah. It was never that for me. It was more, I found the science and the business really exciting. That's why I always did launches. People don't always do that, by the way. Executives in our industry don't do that. It's a very taxing process to launch a brand. And I always did it because I loved building things. But as I start to go to all these launches, you start to see these patterns, and I could not sleep thinking about it. And that's why I knew that we were onto something, and it was so exciting and scary. I'm not going to lie. It's very scary. We're only 4 weeks in the public as of this podcast, so it's very early, but we've been received with really open arms. Given that we were both in industry so long, we have deep networks and a lot of people that do what we do. And I think our brand voice really resonates with our colleagues that know us. And over the years, people that we haven't worked with in 15 years are calling us and saying, hey, I want to understand more about this. And that's what we're so excited about. And it's really clicking for people. So we know it's going to be good. Barbara?
Yeah, so similar to you, maybe I'll start with the vulnerable side. Scary. I was actually toying with the idea for a long time. Let me just say, I was sitting on the fence, one leg and go back into corporate, take one of these fancy executive roles, and the other was, try your own thing, do your own thing, bet on yourself. And I had the opportunity. Somebody just randomly pinged me. She happened to have been a board member, a board member for a couple biotechs, and we had a conversation. And she said, "Well, I'm a little bit confused. When you talk to me, Barbara, all I hear is I want to change the world. I want to do something bigger." And she said, "But when you retreat, it's almost like you crawl into a shell and say, I'm going to feel safer getting my biweekly paycheck." And one thing she said to me that I think changed it was, if today is the first day of the rest of your life, what do you want the rest of your life to look like and feel like? And I definitely knew that I did not want to go back into the same bureaucratic environment.
Yeah.
I did not want to be in a space where I had so much energy to uplift people, to be the best versions of themselves, bring value, but I couldn't, because there was only so much I had, so much agency I had. And so stepping out and doing my own thing became the thing for the rest of my life. Now I say that, not saying that I don't have corporate, executive in me anymore or operator. I absolutely have it. But I do believe that what I'm doing here, what we're doing together at Decyd, could have a 10x, 100x, 1,000x greater scale and impact than, sitting in that singular chair and trying to, spend the time we're doing now to create better value, navigating the politics. And so I've moved from fear, nervousness, to being very convicted and, just super excited about the value that we will be bringing to this industry. And I can't wait. I really can't wait. And I couldn't be more grateful to be doing it with my lovely sister, Michelle. It's beautiful. You need to watch us together when we're going back and forth on a point. It is a beautiful thing to behold.
Yes.
And I love it.
Not only are we excited about what you two are building, but it is so fun and refreshing to be able to be in a space with you two together too, because the way you're approaching it and the relationship that you bring not just to each other, but kind of how the folks that you work with is always inspiring. In the spirit of stepping into your power, taking risks, and potentially learning something new, we're going to transition to our trivia section. So we're moving to off-brand, our quiz.
I'm not good at games, so I'm just going to start with this.
Well, you're allowed to. We're not breaking up the team. You're allowed to collaborate through these. We have just 3 fun little questions. We really appreciated the opportunity here in speaking with you to dive more into a world that we're not as familiar with as you, learn some things. Maybe we'll learn some things together because we encountered some really interesting little tidbits along the way. Idon also doesn't know the answers to these questions. So if she wants to jump in there, you guys can discuss together. First one is a multiple choice question. So in 1978, what company became arguably the very first biopharma company by announcing that they had genetically engineered human insulin using a modified strain of E. coli? 4 choices: Bacterion, Genentech, Bio Brothers, or Coli & Co.
That's not what I was expecting. I don't know.
I know I was expecting some. Can you give us the options again?
The
please?
options are Bacterion, Genentech, Bio Brothers, and Coli & Co.
I'm going to say Genentech.
Ding, ding, ding.
Way to go, Barbara. Way to
go. Okay.
Yeah, so Genentech was a lot of times it's used as a case study, I have come to learn, for how private equity kind of can become involved in life sciences. Before that, private equity largely stayed away from something that they felt like had too long time horizons towards like commercialization, which is something you talked about already, Michelle, in terms of this sort of like horizon of R&D. But yeah, it's used a lot as a little bit of a case study in terms of kind of how, funding early on can become part of that larger journey.
Super interesting.
I also kind of want to found a company called Coli and Co. now, but
That's so funny. I was like, oh, please don't let that be real.
Okay. So this is second question. In prep for this conversation, we were doing a little research ourselves around the readiness gap that Decyd addresses. And we found some really fascinating information. So in 2021, Biogen won historic FDA approval for Aduhelm, a groundbreaking Alzheimer's drug. By 2024, Biogen completely abandoned the drug, taking billions of dollars in losses. Why? And we have an ABC. A, the FDA revoked the approval. B, it was too difficult to manufacture. Or C, insurers refused to cover it and doctors refused to prescribe it.
Michelle, we've done a lot of research around this.
I know. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened with it. Do you remember, Barbara?
We have Decyd reports too. I'm going to say C, insurers, because of the costs.
Ding, 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 ding.
Thanks to Decyd.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about how you guys think about that readiness gap, because as we started digging into it, you name checked this stat right at the beginning, Michelle, that like a lot of drugs fail not because the science is bad, but because the commercialization is bad. Tell us more about kind of like how that comes to life in the world of Decyd.
Ooh, Barbara, I feel like this is like ripe for your explanation, because we talk about the spread all the time.
Yes. So one of the things, and maybe I'll just say the hypotheses we've been working, that has built this product, is that a lot of times the decisions that drive your commercial outcome probably happened 3 to 5 years before you actually even got into market. And a lot of things could drive the realities of whether or not you could pay, patients can pay for it, whether payers are willing to cover it. Do you have enough data to show differentiation? Do you necessarily, do you have the right power around your trials and your studies to create differentiation? When you're going into the market at the time, which is something that we've recognized a lot, doesn't happen a lot, is in those siloed conversations that are happening within the organizations, no one is really asking, what does the landscape look like when we land, right? Am I going into like a blue ocean, as we would say, or are we going to drop right in the Red Sea with all the sharks waiting to bite and take a bite? And a lot of times those are disconnected, not because they intentionally do it, but because the individuals who are making the decisions have a singular lens around their areas of expertise. And so when we think about, and we've run a lot of Decyd reports against different assets in a retrospective standpoint to say, well, if Decyd existed, at the time of this decision, what would our advice have been? And I think for Aduhelm, our advice absolutely would have been that they not launch in the market with the price point at which they were going into the market, because it was going to be impossible for payers to cover it. And quite frankly, they didn't really have, honestly, the data, if I remember correctly, the data was a little bit questionable too in terms of what the true efficacy was in scale. Our model had predicted that it will get approved, but it definitely will not be adopted by the market. And so that's why I knew the answer. And I didn't know, you did not tell us you were going to pick this particular product. So.
No. That's fascinating. Okay, so our third question is more of a long answer. And so not multiple choice. I don't expect, this is leveraging more of your creative, non-AI sides of your brains. So AI isn't the only exciting new modality being brought to the world of drugs. I'm going to tell you the name of a new and somewhat obscure branch of medical research, and I want you to try and define what it does, even if you don't actually know what it does. This branch of science originally made waves in 2015 when it announced that it had discovered a compound that successfully kills MRSA. And this branch of science is called ancient biotics. What would you imagine that ancient biotics just would do?
Can we ask for clues? Because I don't even know what MRSA is.
So that's a very virulent strain of infection that increasingly is becoming resistant to antibiotics. And so it's a challenge. So MRSA, and it's a challenge in a lot of different fields of both like within hospitals, but also sort of like AIDS research, any sort of immunocompromised person, MRSA is a major threat. And the problem is that MRSA is increasingly resistant to all the antibiotics that we have on market. So it was a big deal that ancient biotics came up with a way to combat MRSA. But if you had to imagine what ancient biotics would do, what do you think it would do?
I feel like there's no wrong answer here, right?
No wrong answer.
Because
No
it's a little
wrong
bit like,
answer.
what do you think?
Riff on what you think it would be.
Yeah, ancient biotics, I'm assuming that it's a riff on the word antibiotics, and they may found like a strain of something that is very old and original. As you know, when they're researching drugs and proteins, they look at all of the original strains, right? And ancient biotics might be one of the original strains that potentially could help prior to mutation, maybe that makes it drug resistant, right? So it's what did they say? It reminds me of this is what I'm thinking. That I'm not a scientist. Neither of us are scientists.
No, totally.
I'm thinking of ancient grains. So you think
Totally.
about like
Totally.
a little bit of vegan
Right,
magic
amaranth.
here.
Yeah,
Right,
totally.
right. So when you think of ancient grains, it's about these are the original grains that your body was meant to eat before it was processed and all of that. So the same idea, I think. This is obviously the marketer in me thinking about the origination of the word.
Yeah.
What are the parallels? And so that's my answer.
And
I
so I'm
love
just
it.
going to build upon what she said, and I'm going to say it's probably herbal medicines and not necessarily synthetic. I'm just building upon what she said.
Yeah.
And probably went back to look at strains that have built resistance, but maybe cultural artifacts and behaviors that potentially were able to withstand, right, a full like epidemic potentially. Like that's what I'm thinking about. But
Love
I
this.
might be totally wrong.
You guys get full points. You took us on a whole journey. You didn't nail it exactly, but you took us very, very close.
It was a good journey.
Super, super close. And I mean, you both were picking up on little pieces just from the term that are very, very relevant to this answer. This is just something I stumbled upon as I was kind of doing some research. I thought it was fascinating. So ancient biotics is a specific modern interdisciplinary field of study where microbiologists, medieval historians and historians of other worlds, and data scientists team up to rebuild and test recipes from historical medical texts. So this
It's really good.
Yeah, it's
Barbara,
fascinating.
see, together. That's
Yes.
a great analogy for how Barbara and I bring different perspectives.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is great.
The-
I was
the-
going to say that I was not going to say medieval times. I was going to say, well, it might have been in the Stone Ages, but I was like, but then they all went extinct, so something killed them, and that's why I didn't say that.
Yeah. Let's not pattern ourselves off of Neanderthal medicine because that didn't end up saving them. Yeah. There's a research group, most notably at the University of Nottingham, who formed the Ancient Biotics team, maybe the first one, and they recreated a 1,000-year-old Anglo-Saxon remedy for eye infections that was found in a medieval leather-bound medical book called Bald's Leech Book. It used, let's see, garlic and
Herbs.
bovine bile and wine put in a brass vessel, and it killed a MRSA that was resistant to all kinds of other antibiotic.
That's wild.
Yeah.
See, this gets into the whole, this is why R&D is so fascinating. It's like, what makes a scientist think that if I combine these things, this is going to work?
Totally.
Yes.
You know?
What makes our ancestors of how many 100 centuries ago,
Right.
without the real science, think that those things together. So it comes back to experimentation. They tried a couple things, didn't work. A few things worked. This one works for this, and maybe if I put these together. So intelligence has been there forever. It's just how we nurture it today.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Great. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I learned something new today. For
Yes.
Yeah.
Fun
that
facts.
was awesome.
Fun facts.
That's really cool, Topher. Well, here we go into our final segment before we close out for the day. So we have been kind of taking you on this journey and asking the questions, but now it's time for the two of you to stray as far as you want from the theme. So we're going to play Omnipotent Brand Manager. So you have been promoted to the most powerful brand manager in the history of creation for the span of a single project. You can literally do anything. What brand would you work with, and what would you do?
Barbara?
I'll go. I'll go. Wow. Okay. I love play. Like everything that has to do with play. So I would, and I think I love it because in that moment, people forget about their worries. They laugh, they're happy, there's joy. People are kind when they're playing to each other. So I'll pick Lego. And I think Lego has done so many amazing things, has been there for such a long time. I actually don't know how long, but and they continue to reinvent themselves. And they're components of Lego that I love. I love, if you remember when we worked together, we talked about mock all the time, right? Just the how easy it is to compose things and break them apart. So a space where you truly, when we talk about failure, there is no pressure when you're building with Legos, right? To put things together and break them apart because you can put them right back together. And so if I were this Uber brand manager, I might take it further from the plastic, the plastic in the boxes, and create this crazy wonderland. Not Legoland, because he still paid good, but a place where everyone who just needs inspiration can walk into. You say what you're feeling.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit of a rendition of how you get there, and you could sit down and you just build, and you have other people. A community, I would say, a community space, a true community space. That's what I would love to do. And when I think about it, really for children in particular, I love technology. I love AI, but I think there's something that has happened from the gaming era to social media and now with AI that we need to really create what I'll call productive friction again, bring them out of the comfort of a screen, the comfort of the immediacy to get what you want, and put them in a space like that where they could just imagine and build things, even if it's not perfect. So that's what I will do. A community center that allows children, and I'm going to focus on children, just come together and be themselves. Be what we used to be when we're growing up, where we didn't have the technology, and play was really, truly all about connecting with the pieces and the people around you.
That's a thing now, Barbara, like to raise your children like the 90s. Like to like take them back to the books that you grew up with, like before
Yes.
all of the technology. Like that's a new thing. So it's funny because, you know, we're here talking about an AI company that we built, but I kind of went in the same direction because I think that there's a need for us as humans to really reconnect with almost the tactile side of living and experience and working. And I love this idea of the trades, like training people back in the trades. Like they talk about in the United States, like electricians for data centers and plumbers and things that AI can't replace very easily. But I also think there's a lot of, there's something with the intellect that comes with building things. And I just listened to this podcast, actually acquired on a long road trip about Hermes. And Hermes, instead of kind of moving by way of some of these other luxury brands and building mass market products with their luxury name on it, they actually went upstream and started training more people in the trades of how to build their things. And so you can actually trace each individual piece. And I never understood why these things were so expensive, but you can trace every stitch, every piece of leather, every remnant back to a person. And this idea of, for me, if I were to pick a dream job like omnipotent brand manager, I would love to do something with inspiring people to adopt a trade, right? Using this idea of Hermes and learning that, you know, it's not just about being an electrician or a plumber. You could also be a trade artist and make leather goods. My niece is an artist and she crochets. Which I think is amazing. And there are schools. There's one school that all of the luxury designers go to. I think it's a London School of Embroidery. But every fancy dress you've ever seen, all of the hand embroidery is from a technical school. That it's like the Queen's embroidery or something like that. But there needs to be more than just one. That's what I think. I think that the things that require human craft, creativity, and we can apply that to our businesses too, but there's something about the tactile nature. It's exactly opposite of what we do that I think is really fascinating. I think that there should be a movement and a resurgence to really apply our engagement and work with our hands.
I love that. Well, we have learned so much today. I think when I'm thinking about kind of some of the takeaways that I've taken from this conversation, there are a lot of really interesting human values around vulnerability, around strategy and collaboration, around craft. And these are things that are obviously really dear to both of you, but they are also obviously things you're bringing into the world of AI and the business that you're building around that in the world of pharma. And I think that's something that's super unique, and it's obvious to see in how you're building your business. And so really excited to see where you take things with Decyd. So thank you both so much for chatting to us today. And before we sign off, where should folks go if they want to learn more about your company and track along with you guys as you grow?
You can follow us on LinkedIn, look up Decyd, DECYD, or at our website, decyd.ai. So thanks for having us, Topher and Aidan.
Thank you.
We love seeing you again. It's like getting the band back together.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for listening. What a great conversation we had today. To also learn more about Territorial and how we help brands find their place in the world, check out our website, www.weareterritorial.com. And when you're there, subscribe to our mailing list so you can hear the latest news about what we're up to. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.